are two detectors. So first one is called, the gray color one is called the advanced loop detector. So assume that a tram is moving from Toorak Road to the Burwood Highway, and when the tram touches the advanced loop detector, which is 200 meters apart from the intersection, then it will generate a signal to the traffic light controller saying that there's a tram coming and you need to give the priority to that. So at that instance, all the traffic lights will allow traffic from Toorak Road to Burwood Highway to allow and stop all the traffic from other two ways. So this has been the implementation or the case where for like a couple of years, probably 10 years. And there's a problem with that, which they have understood and they are trying ways to improve it. So that is due to different weather conditions and due to different traffic conditions, it is not possible to know how long will it take for the tram to go from here to the intersection. So if there's traffic, heavy traffic in this area, then it will allow tram to move forward even though it takes like a couple of times. Of course, there are bug fixes type of things which they have done to remedy these situations, but that's a temporary solution. So they want to fix it and make it smoother run. So the problem here actually is there's no way that we can predict how long will it take for the tram to go to each intersection. So that was the problem, and the solution is being using a GPS device within each tram and use some AI based solution to predict the exact time for each tram to move from that particular location to the intersection. So interestingly, this is one of the highlights of my research career, so which taught me the importance of data cleaning, because we all know that 80% of time we spent on data cleaning and gathering data, and the rest of 20% is for developing the models. But here, once we got the data, because we used a tram and we asked Yara tram to use a GPS device and collect the data, and they gave us the data. So once we got the data, like we were just interested to see which routes these data were going. So we plotted them in a Google map, and then strangely we saw that some trams were going along pathways and some were going along on shopping complexes and houses and all. So then after, when we were looking, we tried to dig further on that, we found out that the person who's responsible for that forgot to switch off the device when he's taking that home and next day bringing it to the tram. So here we really understood that the importance of data collecting and really making sure the data is at the correct phase before going into the model development. So because of that reason, we had to redo the data collection again and then use that. So the next, here like I'm talking a bit into detail because this is quite interesting project for me, and even in your projects these things might be useful. So from the GPS device, the data which we got was a timestamp and the coordinations, latitude and latitude. So because these data are highly specific, we need to make it more generalized. So the feature engineering part, we had to do further on that, and we had to spend a couple of weeks to really get what features we should select for this model development. So with that, with these three data points, we were able to calculate distance to destinations, distance to intersection, and speed, acceleration, hour of the day of the week, so and so. And using different techniques, we were able to capture which features are the most important. If you are familiar with deep learning and machine learning, we use a tool called SHAP tool, SHAP, to identify which features are the most important. So we found out that distance to destination and hour of the day were the most important features. So next comes the model development and deployment phase. So we tried out with 3 intersections. These intersections are named 4048, 2000, 2001. So that's their terminology, so I'm not going to, I don't know why they use that terminology, but that's their terminology. So the tram is moving from this direction, city, to the Vermont south. So here with these three intersections, we developed both traditional machine learning models like linear regression, decision trees, as well as used novel recent models like artificial neural networks and deep neural networks. So yeah, we were able to come up with a good accuracy, like if it's smaller intersections, like small distance intersections, we were able to come up with models which are predict the travel time less than within 10 seconds, and when they are distant ones, like 1 kilometer, we were able to come up with like 50 seconds error. So another interesting thing which I saw was, we all know that the traditional machine learning models work better when there's a small set of data, but when the data amount is larger, then deep learning models work better. So here this clearly shows that when the distance between two intersections are less than around 500 meters, the linear regression and traditional machine learning models work better. But when it's like 1 kilometer or more than 500 meters, we see that deep neural networks work better. So this clearly shows that deep learning models can works well when you have large amount of data, but the same thing if you have a small amount of data, then traditional models would work better. So next, the deployment part. So what we had was, in each TRAM we had a GPS device, and using cloud services, in cloud we implemented our predictive models, AI models, and then using REST APIs we were able to capture the TTA at each 5 seconds, and then after taking that time to arrival for each intersection, we send that to the local traffic light controller at their next intersection, and then that would control the traffic light based on their travel time. And currently this is being trialed in 2 TRAM routes, and we were on news because of that. So so finally, another data analytics projects related to connected city, smart city, as well as digital health, so which was done in collaboration with Trobe Health School and Ball State University in US. So in this work, we developed a wrist-worn accelerometer-based predictive model to capture the physical activity intensity. So this is something which all the adults here should know. So to prevent adverse health conditions, the US Department of Health and Human Services has presented a guideline advocating that each adult should at least spend 2.5 hours in moderate to vigorous physical activity, or 1.5 hours in vigorous intensity activities each week. For the people with does not have any adverse health conditions, you can carry out by your own pace, but the people who has adverse conditions like different diseases and all, the doctors need to monitor how much of activity they do. So what's currently being done is, there are a couple of methods, and the most common method is to self-reported physical activity. So the patient himself or one of the patient's caretaker will write on a notebook how much of time that person has been in that different activities. So that's actually not reliable for obvious reasons. Also, because of that, a popular method for capturing this physical activity is using accelerometers and devices like heart rate monitors. But things like heart rate monitors and your hip-worn accelerometers are quite inconvenient and not comfortable to wear all the time. Because of that, everyone would agree that using wrist-worn accelerometers are one of the easiest way where you can use, like you can wear a Fitbit or your watch to capture that. So with that, there have been trials and there have been actual products which have developed to capture physical activity. But there's one limitation with that, because most of these algorithms were able to go up to like 80% of accuracy capturing these physical activities, because they have been using labeled physical activity data in structured settings. So you take a couple of people into a lab and ask a lab or a different sports complex environment and ask them to do different activities to capture different levels of physical activity, like run slowly, run fast, jump, wash clothes and sweep the floor likewise to capture different activities. So here what we are talking is about is your wrist movements. So based on studies, it's imperative that your wrist movements are your identity. It's like your retinal print or your thumbprint. Each and every individual has a unique wrist movement. So also when someone is watching you and you are being watched, your wrist movements will not be same as in your free living setting. So it will differ. So because of these reasons, that 80% accuracy was there. So in our work, what we need to do was to utilize this free living nature of the world, free living people, and actually gather data from them to develop this model to see whether that can be really useful. So in our study, it consists of 120 participants who wore accelerometers for 2 weeks in their waking hours. So these people were university staff, university lecturers and university students. So they wore that, and we were able to capture data in 100 hertz. That means 100 readings per second, which accumulate to around 20 billion data points. Total file size was 1 terabyte, 1.1 terabyte. So that's a huge data, and which is the biggest data I have worked with. So with that, we developed like 2 models. One is to predict the energy expenditure. The second one is to classify whether each second they were in was a moderate activity or vigorous activity or low activity. So we used traditional deep learning models, and then we were able to finally achieve the state-of-the-art accuracy, like with a higher margin. So that was our first step, and currently, because we were able to get a higher margin of accuracy, we were planning to deploy it in actual connected devices from your wrist watches and to use it. And that was the first part of that. But moving forward, like we are working on developing a unique identifier for each human based on these wrist movements, because we have seen that based on our data, each person's hand movement were unique. And if we take 2 days of the same person, the basic abstract pattern of these hand movements were the same. But if we take 2 people, that was not. So we are trying to develop this DNA sequence type of a unique identity for each person, and then try to see whether this would be a groundbreaking research, hopefully. So yeah, so these were the few of the projects which I have done throughout my PhD, and personally I am quite satisfied to see that my PhD work have been transformed to actual products even before I complete my PhD. So to take over the stage, I would like to invite Achini, one of the PhD students at our center, to present her work on digital health. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Achini Adikari. I'm a PhD student at the Center for Data Analytics and Cognition. So my PhD is focused towards human-centric artificial intelligence, and well, I'll be talking about several applications and research that I have done, as well as the team had done previously. So human-centered artificial intelligence, the term effective computing, emotion AI, these have been very popular and trending topics, because after all, the purpose or one of the key objectives of AI is to benefit people and understand people. And at CDAC, at our center, we have evaluated our human-centric AI algorithms mostly in the digital health space. A couple of reasons. One is that because of the availability of digital data channels and internet, this increasing number of digital patients, and the healthcare sector is more focused towards patient-centered healthcare applications. So, yeah. So this has led us to work on the digital health space, but I'll be talking about a couple of other applications in this area as well. So human-centric artificial intelligence, the emergence of digital data has created us the possibility of doing this research, because unlike previous times, now people engage in, continuously engage in social media conversations, online conversations, and they leave their digital footprint in social media. And this has created, we can say, millions of data, right? It's been created every minute. People go on Facebook, online forums, they talk with each other, they interact with each other. All this data are left underexplored mostly. So this was one of the reasons that we undertook this research direction, because we have, with the digital data available now, we have the capability to model human emotions in digital spaces. So my work or my talk will be mostly focused towards how we can model human emotions from digital data, and I'll walk you through some applications. So this is basically what the model that we use. So as Professor Damminda mentioned, we base our research, the emotion identification research, on one of the well-known psychological models. That is the basic emotion model proposed by Plutchik. So Plutchik has proposed a model where there's 8 basic emotions, and the variations of those emotions can be counted as low intense or high intense version of that particular emotion. So most of the supervised approaches in the machine learning approaches at present, they focus on detecting emotions, right? So we go on social media, we take textual content, we can classify or identify what are the emotions in that. But there's research trend towards modeling emotions. So we should be able to identify what is the intensity of this emotion. Because a person who is talking about the emotion sad in an online hotel review, and a person who is talking about the same emotion in an online cancer forum, those are 2 different things, right? So the intensity or the weight of those emotions vary throughout the domains as well. So that is why we need to have generalized, domain-specific emotion extraction algorithms and techniques when we are working on this space. So each emotion, we can detect the intensity of the emotions, as well as model the transitions. That is, what is the probability of a person transferring from one emotion state to another. All this is from their previous social media conversations. So we use an ensemble of machine learning, NLP and deep learning techniques to model these emotion modeling techniques. Yeah, so I'll be talking about these things. Coming back to digital health, so the availability and the accessibility of internet has created a different dimension of human behaviors. So it's stated that more than 78% of adults go online to search for medical related information. So this is especially important when people are suffering from a chronic illness or terminal illness like cancer. They go online and share their experiences with each other. So because of the anonymous nature, they talk about things that they won't openly talk about with their family or friends, and they share experiences with people who have undergone similar experiences. So these online support groups have been a really useful and popular means of patient care. But there's a gap. The reason is, although there's so many online support groups available and people go on and talk about their illnesses online, they have not been translated into real-world applications or to support the healthcare industry. So that is where we created a framework. I'll talk about that later. In this slide, the PRIME framework. So this is one of our key contributions from our center. We worked with a group of clinicians at Austin Health, Australia, which is a research-based hospital. And we worked with a group of urology urology group, and they were actually amazed by the volume of data available online. So they said, although they treat the patients in the clinical way, they haven't seen this side of people. Like, people have gone online and talked about the quality of life, their emotions and everything. So this data and the real world clinical care, there was a gap. These were not bridged. So this is where we proposed this framework. So we used deep learning, machine learning and NLP techniques to identify from online forum conversations, to identify patients' demographic information, side effects, clinical informations, as well as their emotion behaviors over time. So this is just an illustration of how people talk about their experiences online and what are the elements that we have captured. So demographics, decision-making behaviors, emotions and treatment types. So all these information are there, but the challenge with textual data is that it's unstructured. It's not like it's numbers. So people can write in different ways. So we have to take into account all this information as well. So using the PRIME framework, we were able to drill down to multi-granular level of this detail using deep learning, machine learning and NLP techniques. So this PRIME framework, we used it in prostate cancer for